Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. This is going to be a short lecture with a very specific point to it. It's to orient you to this class that you're taking online. It is Introduction to Physical Anthropology, or Anthropology 102. And I'd like to introduce myself, and in this brief lecture, I'd like to just go through what the course is about and what's expected of you. First of all, my name is Dr. Andrew McCarthy, and you can refer to me however you like. There's a purpose for me saying this at the onset, because this is a science class, and although I do have credentials, and I want you to know about them, just so I'm not just some random person speaking at you or telling you about a book that you're supposed to read. I actually have been doing archaeology, anthropology for a quarter of a century now, and I have a lot of experience. But I'm also not trying to speak at you as an authority figure that I have all the answers. That's not the way science works. As I said, this is a science class, and the way that science works is we ask questions, and you are perfectly capable of asking me questions. I may have the answers to most of those, some of those, but there are some things that I'm going to say, we don't know about that. And that's where I want you to go with this course, is to ask questions. If you don't understand something, then talk to me about it. Make sure that you know where the evidence is pointing. Scientists don't just state their opinions, they back up their hypotheses with substantiation, with evidence, which things that we build up a picture that gives us a more accurate view of the way the world works. And physical anthropology is, in this sense, a hard science. It's actually like biology. But as we're going to see, there's more to it than just a biology class. Anthropology is looking at some aspects of human nature that go beyond just our biological functions. So, as I said, my name is Andrew McCarthy. I teach at the College of Southern Nevada in the Department of Human Behavior as an anthropologist. I teach a range of anthropology and archaeology courses, and I have been involved with this discipline for a very long time. I do field work in all around the world, excavating archaeological sites here in North America, right in Las Vegas. I have a couple of different projects in the Mediterranean island of Cyprus. I work on several projects in Syria and the Middle East, and I've done work elsewhere as well, including where I did my PhD in Scotland. In 2018, I moved back to the United States after having lived abroad for 20 years, and I came back in order to teach you here. I'm very excited to be back in the United States, and I had been running institutions and doing project management and things that were exciting and interesting, but they weren't teaching. And I missed it a lot. I missed teaching classes and introducing the subject to students like yourself. And so I am back doing what I really love to do, and this is fun for me, and I hope it will be fun for you too. That's who I am, and I hope to get to know you over this course as well. I have adapted my lectures to facing the camera and trying to explain what is in the book, which the book is Our Origins, Discovering Physical Anthropology by Clark Spencer Larson. It's a very good book. There's no perfect book, but it is a very good book, and I'm pleased to try and guide you through it. And I really do feel that that's my role, is as guide. It's a dense book, there's a lot of information there, and it's not really up to you to know what are the most important details. That's for me to tell you about. And also, I'm given guidance by the college too. The college tells me what is expected for you to learn, and it's my job to make sure that you learn it. So in the syllabus that you have, there are some course objectives. And I'll keep coming back to these because ultimately that is what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what my job is to make sure that you meet the objectives that are set by committee for the college, expecting that someone who comes through Anthropology 102 should know these certain things. So I'm going to go through that list right now, and I'm going to point that out, and I'll elaborate on how we're going to approach each of these. But first, when I first started teaching at the College of Southern Nevada, I asked some of my students why it was that they were taking this anthropology class, and almost universally it was because I'm required to. That was the answer. I have to take this class. And so I now understand this. I taught for years at another university where they were only archaeology students. They were only anthropology students. They were people that were there because that was the career they were on. And I understand now that most of you are not anthropology students. You are not taking this course because you are deeply fascinated by the subject. But that's my job, is to make you interested, but more importantly, to understand why this is an important course. In fact, perhaps one of the most important courses you might ever take. Maybe not for your career, but as a person. This goes beyond just simply learning things that are trivia or things that might be useful at a cocktail party or something like that. Anthropology, by definition, anthropos in ancient Greek means human, and anthropologos, anthropology, the Greek word that we base our word anthropology on, means the study of humans. Now, that may seem like a huge, big topic, and it is. And I want you to embrace that idea, that anthropology as the study of humans is really one of the biggest subjects we can study, which makes it really daunting. It makes it a hard task. How do you say, how do you start? How do you start to describe humans? If I were to say, okay, start studying humans, what do you do? Well, that's a question that was asked by the first colleges and universities ever to existed. 1,000 years ago in the city of Bologna in Italy, what's considered to be the first ever university was founded, one that's continuously been used at least. And at that time there was probably no more people in the entire university than there is in the class that we have right now. There were the magisters, there were the teachers, and there were the pupils. But it was really just a conversation about knowledge, about one person had knowledge of this thing, one person had knowledge of another thing, and in fact, one person could read just about every single thing that was written, full stop. You could read everything that was written. Everything that was in a library was basically everything that there was to read. Now, if I were to ask you your assignment for tomorrow is to go and read everything, you would say that's impossible. That's an impossible task. It is, and in fact, that's not necessarily a bad thing, that there's more than one person can read. But what it does mean is that we have to actually slice and dice up the way we approach information that's different than we did 1,000 years ago. But ultimately, you're at the College of Southern Nevada, and college, by definition, means a coming together. That's why we call it the College of Cardinals that elects the Pope, or we call it the Electoral College. It's people coming together and bringing their own perspectives, their own ideas, and deciding on a consensus. You are at a college, and that is what we're doing here. In this class, we are looking at one aspect of humans, that is to say physical anthropology, and it will be very science-based. There are other aspects of anthropology, the study of humans, that don't look at our biology and maybe are a little bit more chaotic and nebulous. But what we're really most focused on in this class in physical anthropology is to understand our biology and where our biology comes from, and most importantly, how that relates to other aspects of what being human is. So as you can see, it's one of the most important things that we can study because it's really asking questions about who we are. Also, there is nothing that you can do in life, any career you choose, any profession, any way of life you live has something to do with anthropology, because anthropology is the study of humans. So if you study computer programming, who uses computers? Humans do. If you are in the medical field, who are you treating? Humans. If there is a global pandemic that people have to socially distance themselves from one another, how do you understand how people behave? Well, and how do you understand how people interact with one another? Anthropology can tell you these things. Also, our economy, the way we live our lives, the way we support ourselves, the way we get the food and water and services, everything that we need, all of these things are anthropological questions. So there's really no aspect of life, of your life, my life, our lives, that is not touched by anthropology. And understanding anthropology a little bit will help you in anything that you do. So I hope that you'll get something out of this course beyond just making the grade. I hope you find it exciting, and I hope that you get something from it. I am really excited about anthropology, and I hope you will be too. So I'm not going to give my email and phone number over a YouTube video, so please consult the syllabus for that information, but please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or comments or you'd like to discuss some things. Let me turn our attention to the first page of the syllabus, which is about the course description and the course objectives. The course description, like I said, is not set by me. This is by committee that a group of people are at the college decide on what Anthropology 102 ought to be and what students that take it ought to know. And so the description of the course is Genetics, Heredity, Diversity, and the Origins and Evolution of Humans. Examines basic evolutionary biology, including natural selection, and the relevant history, science, and methods in this field. So every single one of those words has deep meaning, and you will understand what this course description means in great detail by the end of this course. So this may seem like a word salad to you right now, but it is every single word in that you will understand in a much deeper level by the end of this course. So you can go back to that sentence occasionally and see how you're picking up this information. But the course objectives are perhaps more important in terms of guiding you as to what we want to do in this class. And the course objectives say, and I'm going to go through these one by one, there's 6 of them. The course objectives say, by the end of this course, a student should, number 1, define the field of anthropology, the 4 major subfields, and their articulation. Now, I've already defined what the field of anthropology is. That is to say, it's the study of humans, okay? But, as I mentioned before, it's too broad of a topic for us to do all at once. So we're no longer in the University of Bologna. I can no longer assign you to go to the library and read everything that there is. So what has happened in academia, in science, in our way of knowing things is we've broken down into specializations. That means that an individual person can know a great deal about a smaller subject area. You can read everything that there is to read on a very limited subject, and you become the master of that limited subject. You become an expert in that. And that expertise can be then brought together again to create a holistic sense of what does this all mean. And anthropology seeks to do that. This course is not going to bring all of this evidence together from the 4 subfields, but we will, part of this first statement is is going to be an objective of this course, which is you will learn the four major subfields, and I will just tell you them right now, which is physical anthropology, which is one of them, also sometimes referred to as biological anthropology. The other one is, which you might know a little bit about already, and when you think of anthropology, is cultural anthropology, or in other countries it's sometimes referred to as social anthropology. And that deals with contemporary human cultures, the way people interact with one another and the way people live their lives. That's a very big field, and we teach a course that's Anthropology 101. There's also linguistic anthropology, which is the very deep field of the way humans communicate with one another. And it's not just through speech and language, but through nonverbal communication and symbolism and things like that. And then there's archaeology, which we're going to deal with a fair bit in here because we're looking at the evolutionary history of humans, where we come from, and in order to get that information, you have to excavate it. You have to go out and find it, and you have to analyze it and present that information to a physical anthropologist. Which brings us to the third part of this sentence. Define the field of anthropology, which we've done. I've given you the four major subfields, which is physical anthropology, cultural anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and archaeology, and their articulation. That's the final sentence of this, which means how do they all fit together? And that's something that is not going to be evident to you to begin with, but as we go through this course, you're going to see that humans aren't just biological creatures. We're not just physical. We have a culture, and that helps us to survive, and that has evolved as well. That's part of our evolutionary history. Archaeology is required for us to use archaeology to be able to get the raw information that a physical or cultural anthropologist need to use. And also, culture exists by communication, and so linguistic anthropology and communication anthropology is going to be an element of how we understand our physical beings as well. So the articulation of these four fields is as important as being a specialist in one of them. So you have to know where the limits of where physical anthropology ends and where another subdiscipline of anthropology begins, to be able to build up a bigger picture, a total picture of what humans are. Right, which is our ultimate goal. The second of these course objectives is define the field of physical anthropology and interpret current knowledge and practice in relationship to the history of individuals, ideas, and discoveries that have contributed to it. This is essentially a history of the science, right? So you're going to learn names of people. You probably already know who Charles Darwin is. You'll learn his name and you'll learn what he did. You'll also learn some other names of other people in other disciplines that have helped us to understand physical anthropology. And some names you might not have heard of before. You may or may not have heard of Gregor Mendel, for instance, but he's just as important to understanding our evolution as Charles Darwin was. In fact, they're sort of two pieces to a two-piece puzzle. You'll learn how all of these ideas came together and continue to come together to fit into this holistic picture of what humans are, so the anthropology. You will also utilize theory and methods in physical anthropology to compare and contrast non-objective forms of epistemology with scientific ways of knowing. Now, that third course objective is essentially a statement that this is a science class. And I don't really care what your beliefs are or your belief systems are. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but you're going to be tested in a science class. This is a science class, and I'm going to be testing you on being able to understand and reproduce science. I want you to participate in the scientific process. Now, when this course is all done, you can believe whatever you want to believe, that whatever you want to believe. But science has a particular perspective on the way we know things. And you need to learn that. That is what we're doing here. And I want you to set aside any non-scientific ways of knowing aside. Because I'm not testing you on those. This is not a theology class. This is a science class. I'll come back to some of these things in future lessons as well. Number 4, objective 4, is explain the fundamentals of genetics and apply genetic principles to and data to the analysis of evidence concerning evolution. So we're going to learn in fairly fine-grained detail about what genetics are and how they help us to understand who we are as human beings. Now, it's very important to realize that genetics is not a magic trick. It's not the end of any process. In fact, it's really the beginning of a process. You can't say, I behave this particular way because my genes tell me to do that. That's not going to get you out of any trouble that you find yourself in. That, it wasn't me, it was my genes. My genes told me to do this. No. Genes are a blueprint. Genes are the foundation for how your physical body, how you as a human develop and grow. But it's not the end of the story. And so you need to understand in this course what genetics are and what they do, but also what they don't do. So we want to look at evolution, and ultimately evolution is selecting genes for survival or not survival, but what happens with those genes depends on the lifetime of an individual and the environment that individual lives in. Again, we will come back to these principles, but this is a fundamental thing that you need to learn about is genetics, but also what the limits of genetics are, because there's a lot more to evolution than just genetics. You also, number 5, describe, explain, and apply the theory of natural selection to the analysis of material evidence concerning the order primates in general and hominins in detail. Now, let me say this very, very clearly to begin with. You and me, we are primates. We are not that different to other primates. We are a different species. We're even a different genus. And we'll tell you what those things mean in due course. But we are of the same category of animals. We are animals. And we are of the same category with some other animals. And so what we want to learn about in this course is what does make us different. Why, if we are all primates, if chimpanzees and orangutans and gorillas are all primates, you can tell each other apart from an orangutan, right? So we are not the same species. We're not even the same genus as those other organisms. What makes us different? So this is really fundamental to anthropology. We're asked, if you want to study humans, the first thing you need to learn is what is a human? How do we define that? Now, okay, it's not good enough to just say, well, we know a human when we see a human. That's not good enough. That's not science. We have to come up with some real parameters, a real box that we fit ourselves into. And so that's important, but also that's not good enough to just